fait, nous avons une petite réunion, un petit briefing de sécurité. Donc, the security officers would like to secure certain aspects. So we'll listen to the security officer. Welcome everyone in our hotel. My name is Mohamed Ali Fajani, Chief Security Officer at Laiko Hotel. I would like to provide you with some information regarding security. In the case of evacuation from the
Vous
plenary
trouvez
session,
4 issues.
you will find 4 exits.
Dans le cas
In
d'incendie, il y a
the
2
event
points
of fire,
de
there are
rassemblement
2 gathering points.
qui sont un dans l'entrée
One
principale,
at the main entrance,
à côté de l'entrée principale,
next to the main entrance,
et l'autre,
and the other
il y a
one,
deuxième à droite,
the second
à côté
one
du
is
service.
on the right, next
À côté du
to
service.
the office.
Il y a 4 portes de secours.
There are
4 portes
Four.
de secours. Je
Je
vous souhaite un excellent séjour par nous.
Excellent stay amongst us,
parmi nous. Bienvenue à tous.
and welcome again. Egress points.
Je vais continuer en français pour dire qu'il y a, pour cette séance inaugurale, on peut parler soit français, soit anglais. So we can speak either French or English, and there is a translation
La traduction
for
est
only this
disponible
afternoon, but
pour
after that
cet
it will be,
après-midi.
in English. Ok, donc moi je vais très rapidement vous
Very quickly,
passer la parole
I
à
will
professeur
hand over
Semia
to
Nif, qui
Professor
est
Semia
directrice
Nif, who
générale
is
de l'Institut
Director
Pasteur
General
de
of
Tunis.
Institute Pasteur
Very
of
briefly in
Tunis.
English, Semia Nif is professor of medicine at the Faculty of
Professeur
Medicine
de
of
médecine
Tunis
à la
and
faculté
the
de
head
médecine
of
de
the
Tunis
laboratory
et la
of
présidence du
hematology at
laboratoire
Institut Pasteur in Tunis
d'épidémiologie
since 10
à
years.
l'Institut Pasteur pendant
She's a
10 ans.
specialist in
Elle est
biology,
spécialiste en
hematology, as I
biologie,
told. She has
hématologie.
been a member of
Elle a
the
été
board of
membre
directors
du
of Institut
conseil
Pasteur in Tunis
du
and the scientific council of the Institut Pasteur
et
de
du
Tunis.
scientifique de l'Institut
Semia,
Pasteur de Tunis.
You have the floor.
Semia, à
Et
vous la
Semia,
parole.
je crois que tu vas parler en français. Tu viens?
You will proceed in French.
Bonjour à tous.
Good afternoon,
Merci,
everyone.
professeur Louzy.
Thank you, Professor T.
Mesdames et messieurs,
Ladies
les
and
membres
gentlemen,
du réseau des
members
instituts Pasteur,
of the Pasteur Network,
honorables invités,
honorable guests,
chers collègues, chers
dear
amis,
colleagues and friends,
en tant que nouvelle directrice générale de l'Institut Pasteur de Tunis, succédant au professeur Heshmi Louzy, à la suite de son départ à la retraite, je me réjouis de vous souhaiter la bienvenue en Tunisie et un agréable séjour parmi nous. C'est pour moi un immense plaisir de vous accueillir tous ici en Tunisie pour cette réunion annuelle du Pasteur Network qui coïncide avec le 130e anniversaire de l'Institut Pasteur de Tunis. Je voudrais en votre nom remercier et souhaiter la bienvenue au professeur Ali Mrab, ministre de la Santé en Tunisie. Sa présence ce jour parmi nous est le témoignage de l'importance que la Tunisie accorde à notre communauté pasteurienne. C'est aussi une reconnaissance des efforts et du rôle que joue l'Institut Pasteur de Tunis dans la politique nationale de santé et de recherche en Tunisie. Je vous transmet également
like to
les
extend
salutations
the greetings
du professeur
of Professor Monsef Bouktir,
de
the
l'enseignement
Minister of
supérieur
Higher
et de la
Education
recherche
and
scientifique,
Scientific
qui n'a
Research,
pas pu
who
prendre part à
couldn't
cette
make
cérémonie
it to this
d'ouverture
opening
en raison
ceremony
d'autres engagements
because of
professionnels.
prior professional
L'Institut
commitments.
Pasteur de
The
Tunis
Tunis
se
Pasteur
félicite
Institute
d'être membre
is
actif
happy
de ce
to be
réseau
active member
et
of this
d'avoir défini
network,
des objectifs
to have
en
outlined
parfaite
objectives that
adéquation
are fully
avec ceux
consistent
de toute la
with
communauté
all of the
scientifique
scientific
pasteurienne.
Pasteur community.
Cette famille qui
This
rassemble
family
à ce jour
that
plus
gathers
de 30 membres
so far more than 30 members established in 25 countries
à l'amélioration
contributes
de
to
la santé
the improvement of global health
mondiale. En mettant en commun les
by
ressources
pulling
scientifiques,
up scientific
humaines
and human and technical resources of all of
le
these
réseau
members.
des instituts Pasteur
The network of the Pasteur Network acts as a synergic entity in order to meet all of major, public health and scientific challenges. The improvement of global health and the struggle against health threats that are at the core of the concerns of Pasteur Network entails collaboration from all stakeholders. Beyond the Pasteur family, I would like to extend my thanks to all of our partners, the governments, the international health organizations, the non-governmental organizations, pharmaceutical and biotechnological actors include, of course, along with the civil society and the media. Your presence amongst us in Tunis to this annual meeting testifies to your commitment and attachment to rich and durable collaboration that is essential to the reinforcement of elaborate action in order to create a resilient and effective health system that is able to meet the global health challenges. I hope that the few days that we will be spending together will be most fruitful and to achieve our objectives. I would like to conclude by expressing my sincere thanks to the organizing committee of Pasteur Network for the laudable efforts exerted in the preparation of this meeting with a view to ensuring the best conditions for our successful proceedings. I'd like also to pay tribute to the organizing committee of the Tunis Pasteur Institute for the efforts exerted to ensure most favorable success conditions to this event. So I will now hand over to my colleague Heshmi Louzir in order to facilitate the remainder of this opening ceremony. Thank you. Thank you very much for this nice introduction. Je vais donner la parole maintenant à M. Amadou Sall, qui est le président du réseau Pasteur. Vous aurez le temps d'expliquer et de présenter votre fondation. C'est tout à fait important pour redonner toute l'information. Amadou Sall, il est le président. Il est le président directeur général de l'Institut Pasteur Dakar au Sénégal et dans le centre de collaboration sur le virus arbovirus, et il est virologiste chargé de la santé publique. Il est expert en Thank you very much, Hashmi, for your handsome presentation. Your Excellency, the Minister of Health, Mrs. Director General of Institut Pasteur, Mr. Hashmi, and dear Stewart and Rebecca, and honorable guests. I'd like to thank my colleague directors of Pasteur Institute. Je voudrais commencer en vous dire que c'est un grand plaisir pour moi d'être parmi vous en Tunisie, et pour plusieurs raisons. Au-delà de la connaissance historique,
because we are in one of the most successful Institut Pasteur here in Tunisia. The reason why I'm saying that, very early in my career, I could see that this is the place where Charles Nicolle used to work and have a Nobel Prize. There is very few Institut Pasteur from the network from which a Nobel Prize has been awarded. So, and I think this is very special to our heart. And when we celebrate Institut Pasteur Network, these are very important to know. The second reason why I'm really happy also to be here is we are also celebrating this year 130th anniversary of this Institut Pasteur, which has been 100 years of excellency in science, excellency in leadership, and also excellency in public health and impact. I want to just name a few of the other directors that are beyond Charles Nicolle. Obviously, today, all our thought as with Kousei Deladji. Kousei Deladji was one of the directors here for several years of the Pasteur Tunis. Has been one of my heroes when I was a young scientist, because the way he was leading this institute and transforming it was really an example for all our network. I also want to pay a tribute to our friend, Hashmi Louzir, who did amazing work for this network. I was just telling to the colleagues, Hashmi is beyond being a great scientist, an amazing human being. He was one of the first to congratulate me when I was nominated for Institut Pasteur in Dakar. So we have leadership which is excellent in science, but leadership which are really good in managing people. My belief is leadership is about people. When we talk about Institut Pasteur de Tunis, I just want to show us also, not only do they have a glorious past, but the future is going to be very bright. I see them involved in this messenger RNA work, are one of the spoke in Africa, working with the WHO Global Health, which is one of a very important projects when we talk about vaccine equity in Africa. So I see them really as a very important institute we are very proud of. The other reason why I'm here and happy to be here today is we are also celebrating the network. As you know, we have been going through a new governance, through a new leadership, and last year has been really very important in terms of achievement. I just want to talk about a few of them. Last year, we have developed very strong partnership with key players, which show that the vision of the network are one of the platform of global health. With world recognition is something that is turning to real reality. We could see that we have been part of the WHO Health Assembly, which is very important as you're a non-state member. We have been part of the World Health Summit, and we have been key player in world-renowned meeting like the Grand Challenge for Gates Foundation, which last year happened in Dakar. Beyond being a major player over the work that Rebecca and her team has done, it's also important to say that some major initiative like the Grand Challenge, which is actually today an initiative that is covering the whole network, gonna position our network into one of the key players in area like climate and health, with Climate and Health Observatory, but which is also be very important when we talk about artificial intelligence, because These are the Grand Challenge initiatives that we're taking and that are critically very, very important, and that we need really to say that. By doing all that, our Pasteur Network is becoming more and more what people call a global organization. Very relevant at the local level, but extremely impactful at the global level. Anything that we do in terms of detecting epidemic, developing messenger RNA vaccine, would have a huge impact in the future. And that's also the reason why I am happy to be here, because we are contributing to the global through different ways. One last reason why I am really also happy to be here today is because we want also to celebrate that when we talk about the Pasteur Network, we are also talking about the International Office of Pasteur in Paris. Our friend Fernando is not with us today, but over the last year they have done tremendous work in Southeast Asia with Singapore, in Japan, in Middle East with Abu Dhabi. And all that has been built in connection with the network. And I think it's very, very important to celebrate the network as one unique platform where we all collaborate together and bringing much better opportunity for the world. I don't want to finish without thanking very important people today. The first group I want to thank is really the group of the Institut Pasteur of Tunis. We have been really extremely happy and touched by the warm welcome since we arrived and all the fantastic and remarkable organization that has been done. And I'm sure the next day is going to be really excellent. So I want to thank you for that. I want to thank particularly Eshmi, who has been starting organizing that with the team in this regard, and all the people from the Pasteur Network office in Dakar, in Paris, that has been working on that. I want to thank also particularly our leadership at Pasteur in Paris, Stuart Cole. As you know, Stuart is having his very last meeting as Director General of Institut Pasteur, and I would really like actually to pay a tribute to his leadership. He has been playing an important role to bring the network where it is by working to make sure the governance is going to change and make sure that we are more visible and ambitious and supported most of the initiatives that we've been trying to bring to transform the network. So Stuart, thank you very much. We're very grateful for all you've done for the network. I wouldn't finish without thanking, obviously, Rebecca, who is our executive director, are moving all this along. I want to finish with just some message of hope. You know, today we live in a difficult world. We have war in Europe, we have war in the Middle East. But I just, with that, want to think, even though people may be very pessimistic, we have to keep in mind when I come to a meeting like that, where I see people from Institut Pasteur of Iran, people from Institut Pasteur of St. Petersburg, working with scientists from Dakar, from other parts of the world, in peace, it takes us where Pasteur is always saying, we should do science, because science is a torch that enlightens humanity. And with this message of hope, I want to thank you for your attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amadou, for this introduction. And now I will give the floor to Dr. Stuart Cole. Stuart Cole is, for the Pasteur Network, is the vice-president, but he's the president of Institut Pasteur in Paris, and he's also the president of the foundation, which is not put here. In Paris, he's president since 2018, but he worked there before, and he already visited Tunisia. He is an internationally renowned scientist and professor of microbiology pathogenesis. He was director of strategic technologies and the executive scientific director, contributing to several patent applications related to HIV/AIDS, cervical cancer, and multi-drug resistant tuberculosis. He has participated in the scientific advisory board of the Institut Pasteur in Iran, the Institut Pasteur in Montevideo, and the Institut Pasteur in Lille. Stuart.
Thank you very much, Heshmi, for the warm words of welcome. It is a great pleasure for me to be here for the Pasteur Network Annual Meeting 2023, PNAM 23. And in my various roles, I would like to welcome each and every one of you. In particular, we are honored to host Minister Ali Emrabet today. A warm welcome to you, Minister. PNAM 23 is a great opportunity for all of us for at least 3 reasons. First, it allows us to take stock of the collective achievements of the past year. Note the many partnerships and projects presented by Amadou. Second, it allows us to look forward and to prepare for the challenges facing the Pasteur Network and scientific cooperation. Here, I agree with Rebecca, from whom we will hear shortly, that we need both innovation and cohesion to be collectively successful in 2024. Third, it allows us to share our ideas and vision and to tighten the links that bind us. I will now make some remarks in my 3 different roles. I begin in my capacity as President of Institut Pasteur, almost at the end of my term in office. I will therefore take stock of Institut Pasteur's 2019-2023 strategic plan as it pertained to the Réseau International des Instituts Pasteur, the RIP. We have given new impetus, structure, and equity to our relationships through the reform of the RIP and its transformation in 2021 into the Pasteur Network, with the intent, the explicit intent of making the Pasteur Network a global actor in the field of global health. Now, thanks to these reforms, we all benefit from a more collaborative and balanced mode of governance, allied to a powerful new tool, the Pasteur Network Foundation. The Institut Pasteur reaffirms its commitment to scientific cooperation with the Pasteur Network that remains our most natural and closest partner. The COVID-19 crisis led to an unprecedented mobilization of the Pasteur Network, and the Institut Pasteur played a very active role in supporting our collective efforts. I would like to remind you that 33 Pasteur Network research projects were selected by the Institut Pasteur's COVID-19 task force and funded by the Institute. The Institut Pasteur is truly appreciative of the multiple wide-ranging synergies that are developing within the Pasteurosphere. I will cite one emerging example, the construction of an ambitious collaborative project between the Institut Pasteur of French Guiana, and the University of California at San Francisco on vector-borne diseases. This collaboration is based on sharing expertise and pooling technological resources, including the Future Center for Vector-Borne Disease Research in Paris, the Vectopole in Cayenne, and the Quantitative Biology Institute in San Francisco. I remain fully confident in the Institut Pasteur's future as a member of the Pasteur Network, and know that my successor, Professor Yasmine Belkaïd, supports our shared ambition to serve science and human health. Now, coming to my role as president of the Pasteur Network Foundation, I will say how proud I am of what was achieved in 2023, for instance, in the regional strengthening of the Pasteur Network to meet the members' needs, in building new relationships, and also in fundraising, But this is just the start. We are now participating in more scientific and global health initiatives than ever before, with scientific calls specifically designed to support Pasteur Network members via the Pasteur Network Foundation. In so doing, we are raising the visibility of the Pasteur Network internationally. I also speak in a personal capacity as a Pasteurian of 40 years standing. Let us all remember that the Pasteur Network is truly unique in the world because we offer a model of cooperation underpinned by a vision of scientific excellence for the benefit of human health everywhere. This is precious. Finally, a few words of thanks. Special thanks to Samia, Heshmi, Amadou, and Rebecca for their impressive work in preparing this important event, which will undoubtedly live in our memories for decades. Extra special thanks to all the members of the Institut Pasteur International Department and to the Pasteur Network as a whole for the exceptional work that you have done and will continue to do to preserve, to protect, and to promote the Pasteur ethos in the coming years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stewart. The next introduction will be done by Rebecca Gray. Dr. Rebecca Gray previously worked as the director of research at Epicentre, an epidemiology and research satellite created by Médecins Sans Frontières, before coming to the Pasteur Network. It's an international medical humanitarian organization. She has published over 200 peer-reviewed publications. She is a member of diverse scientific funding and international organization committee and advisory groups with a focus on vaccine development trials, effectiveness, and epidemiologic studies among vulnerable population. She is also a member of the strategic advisory group of experts at WHO. Now she is the director executive of the Pasteur Network. Rebecca.
Donc, bonsoir toutes et tous. Merci Heshmi, merci Samia, merci Amadou, merci Stuart et merci Monsieur le Ministre. Merci aussi, chers amis de l'Institut Pasteur de Tunis, et merci à tous nos chers invités ce soir. So, we've already heard about the Pasteur Network's accomplishments and some perspectives for the future, so I thought I would use my time a little bit differently to express two different points. One is the importance of the collaboration, which Stuart just mentioned, for stimulating innovation. And the other is our need to challenge assumptions and always consider how we can do things differently and better together. So I'll use two non-traditional examples to really make this a little bit more memorable, maybe a little more interactive for all of you. So bear with me. So the first thing is, when I think of scientific collaboration, I actually think about the International Space Station and how we might learn from it. The International Space Station was, and it remains actually, the largest and most ambitious collaboration in space ever, with representation from 22 different countries, not all of whom get along, but in science and the science of space exploration, they're trying, and it's been in existence for 4.5 decades. The space station itself is the size of a small building. It's actually probably not even half of the room that we're in today. And it's essentially a permanently inhabited laboratory. Over the decades, thousands of experiments have been conducted in these unique conditions of microgravity, which have led to some potentially groundbreaking results. One of the things is engineering of protein crystals that are currently being used for exploration in cancer vaccines. The point I'd like to make about this is that global cooperation and collective knowledge, sharing in particular, towards scientific advancements is extremely critical. As we know, and as Stuart mentioned, Louis Pasteur, one of his founding ideas was that science has no country and that scientific knowledge is beyond all of us. In today's intricate geopolitical setting, which is also underscored by very rapid technological changes, the urgency of nurturing this collaborative mindset is paramount. As we all know, nations are grappling with shifting power dynamics and different technological frontiers, and it's not the solitary pursuit of a single institute or state that will define our collective future. Rather, it's a collective endeavor through mutual dialogue, understanding, and shared commitment that we can lay the foundation for a future that advances science to meet global challenges, yet remains bound by principles of trust, unity, and shared goals. The second point I want to make was about the things that might hold us back as a network. What are the things that are going to make this really hard in terms of our pursuit of collective action? Okay, so this may not sound obvious, but just bear with me for a second. I just want to tell you a story to illustrate my point. Imagine a farmer and his son. They have a beloved horse that helped the family to earn a living. One day, this horse ran away, and the neighbors exclaimed, "Your horse ran away. What terrible luck." The farmer, he replies and says, "Maybe so, maybe not." A few days later, the horse returns home, and in fact, that horse brought a few additional wild horses with him back to the farm. The neighbors shouted, "Your horse has returned," and brought several more horses with him back home. What great luck! And the farmer replies, "Maybe so, maybe not." Later that week, the farmer's son was trying to ride one of these new horses, and he was thrown to the ground, and he breaks his leg. And the neighbors cry, "Oh, your son broke his leg. What terrible luck." And the farmer replied, "Maybe so, maybe not." Because a couple weeks later, soldiers from the National Army marched through the town, recruiting all the boys for the army. They didn't take the farmer's son. He had a broken leg. The neighbors shout, "Oh, your boy is spared. What tremendous luck." To which the farmer replies, "Maybe so, maybe not. We'll see." So the point here is it's hard to know what the consequences of misfortune or good fortune will be, as only time tells the whole story. The world is constantly changing, and often the best option is to suspend judgment. As a network, we need to keep focusing on the big picture and the vision that we're striving towards, and try not to get too distracted with small bumps along the way. We're here this week to discuss important global questions, from climate's impact on health to the future of research and development, and also all of that done while improving equity. I'm excited to have these discussions with all of you, and I hope that you keep in mind during these next several days, open collaboration, focusing on the long term. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Rebecca. Maintenant, j'ai le grand plaisir et l'honneur d'inviter le professeur Ali Mrabet, ministre de la Santé, pour donc annoncer, on va dire, le démarrage de notre Pasteur Network. Professor Ali Mrabet is Colonel Major and was appointed Minister of Health on October 2021. Professor Ali Mrabet is a graduate of the Faculty of Medicine of Tunis and the Institute of Tropical Medicine of the Armed Forces Health Services in France. He holds the position of professor specializing in epidemiology and public health. In addition to his academic role, he serves as the coordinator of the Public Health Master Program at the Faculty of Medicine in Tunis and is an active member of the thesis committee at the same institution. His expertise encompasses various areas, including travel-related disease prevention, international vaccination, education, and the fight against sexually transmitted infection. Je voudrais rajouter en français que le professeur Ali Mrabet a toujours soutenu l'Institut Pasteur de Tunis dans le cadre, disons, de la politique de santé. On a une relation ancienne qui remonte avant sa nomination comme ministre de la Santé, puisqu'il a toujours été présent, notamment dans le comité d'éthique de l'Institut Pasteur de Tunis. Professeur Ali Mrabet, à vous la parole.
Thank you. Bon après-midi, honorable invité, chers collègues, chers messieurs, dames, je vous souhaite la bienvenue. Je vais passer en français. It's a great pleasure to be amongst you in this opening session of the Pasteur Network Annual Meeting 2023. 2023, it's the year that coincides with the 130th anniversary of the Pasteur Institute of Tunis. Ladies and gents, I am particularly pleased to give you my best wishes to welcome you to our illustrious host and experts. Pastorian, ladies and gents, come from many friendly countries to participate in the works of this meeting gathering that will certainly contribute to participate in the works of this gathering that will certainly support the various opportunities for partnership for the strengthening of the activities, research activities, training, development in the global framework of the Pasteur Network, as much as to help the Pasteur family to face new challenges and to put in its achievements a whole list of new successes. Ladies and gents, we should say, or I must say that yes, we just spoke about it, that we as Tunisian men and women are happy or proud to welcome this pleasant initiative to hold this meeting, important meeting in Tunis. I think it's the second one after about 30 years. The first one was for the 100th anniversary of the Pasteur Institute of Tunis. It's been a while. So in this gesture, we see a sign of friendship from the international scientific community, represented here by all the members of the Pasteur Network of scientific institutions, multilateral institutions, organizations from civil society and foundations. The choice of Tunisia is also a deserved homage to the Pasteur Institute of Tunis, to the men and women who created it, and to all those who continue today to continue this generous and humanist message of Louis Pasteur. In fact, yes, the Pasteur Institute of Tunis, this very honorable institution, created in 1893, celebrates this year its 130th anniversary. I no need to remember that it's a third Pasteur Institute created after Paris and Saigon. This institution holds a privileged place in the heart of Tunisians. It reminds us constantly of our fight against infectious diseases leading to the eradication of malaria since the 60s, of trachoma, of the disappearance of leprosy, of plague, of polio, 0 cases since 1994. But we need to remain careful and vigilant, as we said earlier. We are not protected from the emergence of new emergence after the pandemic of COVID, and this came to remind us of the vulnerability of health systems, all health systems, no matter how performing they were. Ladies and gents, More than ever, Tunisia has put men at the heart of any action and the intelligent resource for its own development. The actions carried out over the past years in order to include new technologies, medical new technologies, to allow as many citizens as possible to benefit from this, shows our concern in trying to remain at the heart or up to date with the development medicine. But the strategy can only reach its goal if it does not lead to the liberation of the creative energies of individuals and encouraging them in the will to, to bring more to the society where they live and to add more by encouraging the initiative in them, the creation in them, the innovation. Yes, is a key word of this new century that is given us the emergence of this for the world and to, basically calls on human beings on their day-to-day life. It's this innovation mindset that certainly will be the most precious tools in our efforts for development. Are there thus any better ways to develop and give our young people this mindset of innovation that will allow us to be the actors for the development of their countries, rather than to put them in contact with research, with it and its issues, its capacity to learn and how to raise issues and how to find solutions to these problems? I would like to take this opportunity to salute the contribution of the Pasteur Institute of Tunis that dedicates most of its efforts to research in public health. In fact, about 150 researchers and many students are active in multiple research, such as pathogenic issues involved in infectious diseases, non-transmissible disease, cancer, and all sorts of troubles linked to venom. And even more, the Pasteur Institute is involved in modelization of biological phenomena, artificial intelligence in modern medicine. In addition, the Pasteur Institute in Tunis is carrying out research on the development of new vaccinations and diagnostic tools adapted to the local, including the vaccinations, ARN messenger vaccines, etc., and also actions of resilience in face of pandemics, especially the use of such infrastructures and for good purposes, such as the level 3 lab, security to face these emerging diseases. Ladies and gents, I think that you're privileged here today. Each one of you, is a link in a major network that is proud to continue the work of Louis Pasteur. Your network of Pasteur Institutes or the Pasteur Network is unique. This community that you make up is being built slowly and around this memorable pastor. So it continues to live and develop thanks to the work of each one of you on all continents. And through your commitments for the improvement of health conditions of populations around you, you constitute a unique example at the service of, for the causes of your countries. I've seen that your meeting will include, amongst other than scientific, also strategic aspects in order to identify new proposals for programs and projects. I am sure that this meeting or gathering will be the opportunity for real exchanges on technical issues adequate for this at the global level in order to prepare activities and practical activities. The partners you're going to invite will certainly be paying attention to your approach and contribute to your activities. Ladies and gents, before closing, I would like to thank you and congratulate all those who have contributed from far or near to the success of this Pasteur Network annual meeting, and I wish you a very successful meeting and fruitful exchanges. And I'd like once again to welcome you and wish you a pleasant stay in Tunisia. Please enjoy the climate that we have currently. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency Minister, for this great message that we support we completed the opening session and we have the paper. I'll start by inviting you to be in a position so you can see the presentation on the slides. The first conference will be provided by Professor Rafiq Boukhris. Rafiq Boukhris, il présente sur l'histoire de la médecine arabe. Le professeur Rafiq Boukhris a une expérience multifacette. Il a laissé un impact durable sur la science et la médecine et sur l'impact sur l'histoire humaine. Il est diplômé de Paris, de France, et il est résident à l'université Georgetown aux États-Unis. Professeur Boukhris est un membre de l'Académie islamique de la science et l'Académie tunisienne des sciences, des lettres et des sciences Beit al-Hikma. Il a été consultant pour l'OMS et pour le Conseil arabe des spécialités médicales. Il a contribué académiquement avec 302 publications, présentations scientifiques, avec plusieurs articles sur la médecine arabe. Il était l'auteur de plusieurs livres incluant Population et santé, la vie et la thermodynamique et d'autres publications. Professeur Boukhris, à vous la parole.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much to have accepted to provide us with the
Salam alaikum. Je vous remercie, Hashmi, pour cette introduction et je souhaite la bienvenue à tous les membres de Pasteur Institute, Pasteur Network et Pasteur Institute. Je vais commencer par projeter une plaque sur la pandémie vasculaire actuelle, puisque nous parlons de pandémie. La pandémie vasculaire, je vais prendre juste 2 minutes à ce sujet, et ensuite je vous parlerai de l'histoire de la médecine arabe. La pandémie vasculaire actuelle du XXe et XXIe siècle est la cause majeure de la mortalité, parce que 60 à 70% des gens qui meurent dans les pays dits développés et autres meurent de complications vasculaires qui sont dues à une maladie qui s'appelle l'athérosclérose. Et l'athérosclérose est une maladie où nous, internistes, endocrinologues et cardiologues, nous voyons les patients en fin de piste, lorsqu'il n'y a plus rien à faire, lorsque quelqu'un a des plaques athéromateuses qui lui bouchent le cœur ou fait une AVC, il n'y a
some strokes. There's very little we can do about it because we have come about 20 or 30 years after the start, the initial stage of the disease. We deal with the consequences, but we don't know about the grassroots of the atherogenesis. And in the list that you have right in front of you, there are research is conducted, and we are very interested in these research papers because they study the human metabolism, different factors. It is possible that in 20 years' time the researchers will lead and manage to explain how atherogenesis is formed, and we can then treat 20 years ahead of time any person who would suffer from a heart attack, Alzheimer, or any kind of disease, including the cervical cancer and the breast cancer, without any vascular complications. Je vais maintenant parler en anglais parce que
medicine is very difficult for me to explain or to treat or to talk in half an hour about something that lasted for at least 1,000 years. But, je peux avoir le... Non, non, ici. Il y a Hatem. En principe, il y a un truc ici. Je vais me chercher. E.J. Brown concluded in his book, Arabian Medicine, published in Cambridge in 1921, that until the 17th century, Europeans imitated the Arabs. In what? In their health system, and in particular, when they decided to create and build new hospitals. And the books in Europe educated the European doctors for centuries, from Spain to Ireland, based on Arab books that were translated, as we will see, to Latin, to Greek, and even to Hebrew. The most famous books, medical Arab books, medical textbooks, that were used in all the universities in Europe up until the 17th century were numerous, but 3 of them were admired and followed and in the doctor's education. The first is Al-Hawi of Razi, and my master, Professor Miliez, wrote about this book. Razi is the father of clinical medicine, the first doctor to publish observations on patients in the world. The second book is Kitab al-Tasrif. It's by al-Zahrawi, and the Zahrawi is considered as the father of surgery in all the world. And the third book is Al-Qanun of Ibn Sina. Sir William Arthur considered it the Bible of medicine in Europe from the 12th to the 17th century. But I would like to take 2 or 3 minutes to tell you that Arab medicine is not what happened after Islam. Arab medicine goes back 3,000 years before 3000 BC, if you want. And medicine is just one facet of the progress of a civilization. When you talk of civilization, you have to study what they did in medicine, but you have to study what they did in many other fields. And the civilization of the Proto-Arabs of Egypt and Iraq, Syria, is at the dawn of the civilizations that followed it. Like the Greek civilization is the daughter of Egypt and the daughter of Iraq, Syria. The Persian civilization is the daughter of Iraq and Syria. The Roman civilization is also the daughter of these civilizations. You probably never heard the word Proto-Arabs that I'm using. Arabs exist as Proto-Arabs from the 3000 BC all the way to 1000 BC. Why? Because the Arabs appeared at 1000 BC. The first mention of the word Arab was in an annal in Assyria by a king called Tiglath-Pileser III, and he mentioned that he had to fight the Arabs, and that's the first time the word appears. But what happens is that the Arabs are following their ancestors, who were what we call now Proto-Arabs. I would like to give you some dates. Year 632, the death of the Prophet Muhammad. And around the year 750, the Arabs, in 100 years after the death of Prophet Muhammad, have constituted an empire that extended, that the limes, you know, the limes are the frontiers of the Romans, and now we consider that every country has its limes, which is the frontiers. The Arabs had troops fighting on the banks of the Talas River in China against the Tang dynasty. And at the same time, they had other armies fighting in India, and they had other armies fighting in France around on the banks of the Loire River, and you all heard about the Battle of Poitiers, of course. Another notion that is about the history of civilization and the history of medicine, because as I said, medicine is a part of civilization. The Urheimat of the Arabs is in Syria. A lot of people have the wrong impression that the Arabs started in the Arab Peninsula and moved out of the Arab Peninsula. This is false. The first Arabs in history were the Syrians, and it's from Syria, which was called Arab country there, that the name of Arabs expanded to the peninsula, to Egypt, to the Maghreb, and even to Andalusia. And that's why we say, every Arab say, Syria, al-qalb al-nabd lil-uruba, as you can see, the living heart of the Arabs. Now we go back to, I'm sorry, this is in French. If you look at this, what happened in medicine? You have on the left 3000 BC, 500 BC, 700 after, and 1300 after. As you noticed, there were 4 civilizations that had started medicine: Egypt, Iraq, India, and China. Let's talk about China. It existed and continued to exist without stopping. They had always Chinese medicine going on in China, all the way to the modern Chinese medicine. In India, they had 2 civilizations and 2 medical medical instruction and medical books and so on. The Indus and the Gaunt civilization, but the medicine in India stopped. Egypt and Iraq had at the same time a medicine that existed 3,000 years ago. And they had influence on Crete, and from Crete on Greece, and from Iraq on the Persian. The Greek and the Persian, the Greek gave the Hellene civilization, the Hellene medicine, and the Hellene medicine gave the new Arab medicine that we are talking, the Islamic Arab medicine. And the Arabs contributed to the medicine in medieval Europe and all the way to the modern medicine. Bloch wrote about the Egyptian medicine, the old Egyptian medicine. Around 1700 BC, the Egyptian already had developed medicine, including specialists, dentists, ophthalmologists, surgeons, gastroenterologists, and others. They knew how to assess the pulse, the heart, the different skull fractures, their extension of the skull fracture, and their prognosis. They knew how to reduce different fractures. The Egyptian made sutures of wounds, used honey as a bactericide, put moldy bread on wounds. They used heliotherapy and used extracts of willow, close to aspirin chemically, as an analgesic. They had the first pharmacopoeia and the first catalogs of drugs in the world. They used psychotherapeutic care in the temples. They had 9 admissions for psychiatric cases and interpretation of dreams. They talked about the depression, the disease of depression that they called when the mind is on its knee. Here you have, they did trepanation, as you can see in the hospitals in the pharaonic times. I will finish about Egypt medical history by talking to you about Imhotep. I don't know if you know Imhotep. probably the first doctor that ever existed. He was, at the same time, a genius. He was what we call a polymath, or an encyclopedist. He was a royal prince. He was priest and chancellor of Djoser. Djoser is the first pharaoh that united Egypt. Egyptian story started with Djoser. He was a famous doctor, an artist, a sculptor, a carpenter, an architect, and so on. And he built the Saqqara pyramid that you visited maybe in Egypt. In Iraq and Syria, they had professional doctors. They are called Ashu. And they had medical education called Ashu too. But they faced a marked competition with the priests. There were big fights between the doctors, the real doctors, and the priests in Iraq and Syria because the priests used a completely different approach to medicine. They considered illness is a punishment inflicted by the gods. And when somebody is sick, the demons took possession of the diseased organ. The treatment is white magic and the whole hierarchy of priests. The Greek civilization, as I said before, is the daughter of Egypt and Iraq and Syria. Georges Roux, the famous French doctor and French historian, wrote, Mesopotamian medicine, although still shrouded in superstition, already had some characteristics of a positive science, transmitted in part to the Greeks with the Egyptian medicine. It will prepare the way for the great Hippocratic reform of the 5th century BC. This is a printing from Robert Thom. Robert Thom, I don't know if you have seen his collection, an American painter that had the wonderful collection of paintings of all the major doctors in history. So this is from Robert Thom. This is Hippocrates, and he did this one for Galen. As you know, after the year 750 and between 750 and 80, there was an Arabic language, that medical language and scientific language that created. One question that many Arabs never ask, or many other people never ask, how come that after the beginning of Islam, how come in 100 years, people who didn't have any scientific books, any scientific education, who had no doctors, official doctors, no schools for medical schools, how come in 100 years from nothing, they ended up being at the top of the world civilization, and they will stay there for 600 years? As you know, as I wrote here, those scientific books gave in French, in the French language and in the Spanish language, the English language, more than 5,000 words that are from Arabic. When a Frenchman say Côte d'Azur, nobody thinks that Azur is an Arabic word with Côte d'Azur. But who did this transformation? How the medicine, from no medicine, they ended up having the top medicine of the world? It's because of the Christian Arab doctors. They're called the religion is Nestorians and Sabians. They had the advantage of speaking 3 languages usually. They spoke Arabic as their mother tongue. They spoke Syriac, which is the Aramean type of language, but they spoke also Greek, and they were very good in Greek because they were in contact with the Greek-speaking people in Anatolia and in Greece. And so they had no problems into taking the Greek books in philosophy, in medicine, in history, and translating them right away. So they did a fantastic job. And the people who did this translation, and as in the Arab world, we are very, we recognize these people as the one who created these Nestorian and Sabaean doctors who created the scientific language of the Arabs. I give you here some, the Bukhtishu, Yahya ibn Masawayh, and probably the most extraordinary genius that did that. His name is Hunayn ibn Ishaq. And Al-Kindi, and we will come back to Al-Kindi. Now, just in comparison for you, during the Umayyad kingdom of Cordoba, when Cordoba was the capital of the Arab kingdom in Spain, that lasted, the kingdom of Cordoba lasted from 756 to 1031. The capital city of Cordoba alone had 70 libraries. The biggest library in Andalusia contained 500,000 books. In contrast, if we take a look at the libraries in medieval Europe, the biggest library in the West was in France, in Paris, and it contained only 2,000 books. Now, how about the system in the Arab medical history? How about our health system? Two things to remember. The hospitals were created and paid by the governments, by the king usually. But they created what is called the waqf. Waqfs, it's you give a land, you give an orchard, you give business, and the money that is made by that waqf goes to the hospital. And in Tunisia, in the city of Al Qayrawan, which is called Kairouan by some people, in the city of Al Qayrawan, the largest hospital was a state-of-the-art institute. They had several hospitals, but it's one of the largest ones, with well-organized halls, including waiting rooms for visitors, female nurses recruited in Sudan. They had a mosque for the patients to pray and study. They had regular physicians. They called them fuqaha al-badan. It also had a special ward for lepers, Dar al-Judhama, at a time when elsewhere in the world, leprosy was deemed an untreatable sign of evil. And just for history, medical history, hospitals became scientific and research institutions. The Nouri Hospital in Damascus, the Mansouri Hospital in Cairo. Mansour Qalawin, the king of Cairo at the time, wrote, "I hereby devote these waqfs for the benefit of my equals and inferiors, for the soldier and the prince, the large and the small, the free and the slave, for men and women, free entrance to the hospitals." And the constitution of the Mansouri Hospital is written, "It is at the service of the powerful and the weak, the poor and the rich, the subject and the prince, the citizen and the brigand, without demand for any form of payment, but only for the sake of God, the provider." I wanted to finish this presentation by describing or choosing 3 doctors, because hundreds of doctors in the medical Arab history. It was very hard for me to decide from several hundreds which one to take, but I decided to take one from the east, from Iraq, one from Tunisia, Al Qayrawan, capital city at that time, and one from Andalusia. So I think geographically it's at least good. And the times are also very different. The first one is from Baghdad, Iraq. His name is Yaqub al-Kindi, and he's known in Europe. He was known because his books was translated by Al-Kindus. The second one is from Qayrawan, Ahmed ibn al-Jazzar, and his name in Europe, when they translated his book, they called him Al-Jizar. And the third one is Abu al-Qasim al-Zahrawi, Cordoba, Andalusia, and his name for the Europeans, Abu al-Qasis. Al-Kindi, all of the 3 of them were what we call polymaths. Polymaths are people who are, they call them in French, encyclopédistes, they were not only doctors, They were doctors and many other things, and they excelled in the other things as well as they excelled into medicine. Look at the list of things he studied and published on. This is Al-Kindi. He published 270 books, only 22 in medicine, mathematics, logic, music. D.M. Dunlop wrote a book called Arab Civilization 800 to 1500 AD. And he wrote, Al-Kindi preceded the Christian West by several centuries in introducing scientific rigor into the emerging Arab science. And as a person, I always like, when I read and study these famous past geniuses, how they were as humans. Because of course, 270 books is fine, but how was the person? And I have a very sentence written by Al-Kindi, the man. He asks the reader of his books, of one of his books, we ask the reader to whom this book of ours has reached, and if he finds anything of which we have not spoken sufficiently, to be patient and not to be in a hurry to think badly of us, until he has completely reviewed all our books. Our wish is to thank those who have given us their advice. Our goal is to help anyone we can help in order to be useful to humans and not to run behind praise and arrogance. Another thing about Al-Kindi, to the grandson of the governor of Kufa, who had asked him, how is it that we never see you soliciting at the Sultan's door or at the meetings of the rich merchants? He never went to them. Al-Kindi replied, these places are the places where those like you seek their fortune. I seek mine where no one could ever dream of taking it from me. The problem here is, I wouldn't have time to discuss it with you, but the year 847 is what they call fatidic year for Arab medicine and Arab civilization. It's a year where the whole equilibrium, the whole golden age of the Arabs started going down because of the Orthodox religious people taking over the education to start with, and then taking over the politics of the country. Al-Kindi, before 847, was respected and honored under three caliphs, Al-Ma'mun, Al-Mu'tasim, and Al-Wathaq. They were the kings were mathematicians, poets, and so on. And then after 847, Al-Kindi was beaten and persecuted until he died, until two reactionary caliphs, Al-Mutawakkil and Al-Mu'tamid. Why? Because Ibn Hanbal, zealots, tried and almost succeeded to beat him and so on, but to make his works disappear, and they almost made those 270 books disappear. And Henri Corbin wrote about Al-Kindi. Al-Kindi died a lonely man, persecuted and so on. Robert Tom represented what he thought would be an Arab medical doctor examining a child. Now we come to Kairouan to almost finish. Ibn al-Jazar.
Professeur Boukhari, si oui. on a atteint un petit peu le temps, si vous pouvez aller un tout petit peu plus vite pour respecter quelques minutes. Merci.
Okay. Al-Jazar was from a family of doctors. He was also a polymath doctor, philosopher, and so on. He wrote books for the poor, he wrote books for the children, he wrote books for the elderly patients, and so on. 40 works, okay. He wrote different things, study precious stones, pamphlet for the soul, literary standards, pamphlet of perfumes, and so on. Okay, we are going to go faster. Abul Qasim al-Zahrawi is the father of surgery. He probably, a lot of people agree. Some people say he's the greatest surgeon in history, and others the greatest surgeon from the 10th to the 17th century. His kitab al-Tasrif is a huge thing. It's 30 volumes, surgery, medicine, and so on. He developed, which is very unusual for surgeons, he developed 200 instruments himself, drew them, and gave them to posterity. Well, he did, you have to go look for Zahrawi, because he had what they call les premières, the firsts. He did so many firsts. He invented so many things and started so many new things that it takes books to do it. You have some here. Okay, I won't talk about Ibn Nafis, which is what I call the great little-known doctor, who is the person that the cardiologists should have a statue of Ibn Nafis in their house. Okay, Zahrawi, number of first thyroidectomy, first tracheotomy, new types of sutures, windows, ligation of the arteries, more first. Okay, almost finished, 1 minute. So what happened to us? I have 1 minute for what happened to us. Okay. What happened to us is the year 847. The 600 years of golden age of Arab medicine and civilization went up. When we arrived 847, structure of the change in the government, change into the education, like this, and then the golden age was so strong that it took 400 years after 847 for the Arabs to disappear from civilization and from medicine. All the last ones, Ibn Khaldun, as you know, Ibn Khaldun is born, I think 1 kilometer from here, you know, he's born in Tunis. We have his house, we have the school where he went. Ibn Khaldun was the witness of the end of the golden age of the Arabs. And he was very, very saddened by it, and he wrote it. What happens is that after the year 1350, the year 1400, no books, no civilization, no medicine, nothing. There was a French doctor who came in 1804 to Tunis. He was the private doctor of one of our kings called Hamouda Bey. The name of the French doctor is Louis Franc. And Louis Franc was in the army of Napoleon, and then he came to Tunis. He wrote a fantastic book. He wrote a book, 1804, 1804. He visited Tunis. He visited the doctors in Tunis. He asked, can I meet the doctors? Can I meet the society? And he gave us, in a book, a picture of a live picture that he described of just what he found, 20 doctors in Tunis in 1804. And he asked them, where did you study? And the 20 doctors said, with my father. My father was a doctor. They didn't know. He told them, do you have any book? They said, yes. So they went, and what did they bring him? One of the books written, the 3 books I talked to you, the Qanun of Ibn Sina. They brought like 10 pages, copied pages from the Qanun of Ibn Sina that they didn't even know how to read very well. And that is the price that we paid, and disappearing from civilization, disappearing from medicine, all the way to when I went to school to study in Paris and then in the States, because there was no medical school in Tunis when I was young. We paid that price because we gave the education and the politics to people who are reactionary and fundamentalists. Thank you.
Ok, donc merci beaucoup, professeur Rafik Boukhri. C'est vraiment c'est fantastique. Bon, on apprend des choses, on se rappelle des choses, et vous voyez comment les systèmes sont fragiles. Hein, donc ça monte, et puis des choses. J'espère que maintenant on va reprendre, et j'espère qu'avec le réseau des instituts Pasteur, on va continuer à être, disons, préparé par rapport à toutes les menaces de santé en général. Maintenant, je passe la parole à professeur Stewart Cole pour une conférence. Malheureusement, je n'ai pas le titre, mais vous allez le dire. Il est là. OK. So, TB, the Forgotten Pandemic. Stewart.
Thank you very much, Heshmi. So, why is it forgotten, TB? Well, the answer is quite clear. It's because it's a disease of low and middle income countries, and that the rich world and the pharmaceutical companies often, but not always, ignore. So tuberculosis is a serial killer. Why do I say that? First of all, the causative organism was identified by Robert Koch, Pasteur's rival and co-founder of the field of microbiology, in 1882. And he showed that Mycobacterium tuberculosis was responsible for the disease. And as we just learned from Dr. Boukhris, that Pott's disease, which I'm showing you here, and so this is from an Egyptian mummy of about 5,000 years ago, should be called Al-Zarawi's disease, because he was the first one to describe it, but he did not show that there was an association with Mycobacterium tuberculosis because he was way ahead of his time. Tuberculosis is the leading cause of death due to an infectious disease, and I say that because no less than a scientific journal, the Nature, published this article in 2030 where they compared the death rates from a variety of infectious diseases, so smallpox, which you can see in orange, malaria, and so on. And the main killer by far was tuberculosis. And so in the time period between 1800 and 2013, over 1 billion human lives were lost to tuberculosis. So this is truly a very serious serial killer. The life cycle of Mycobacterium tuberculosis is depicted on this slide. It's an airborne disease. 50% of the people who have it are contagious, and so they can pass it on. Of the infected individuals, 95% will be asymptomatic, but will present with what's known as a latent infection. 1 in 20 of these who's immunocompetent will reactivate during their lifetime. But if they're infected with HIV or immunosuppressed, then this goes up by a factor of 10 and leads to another case of active infection, and the cycle goes on. If a patient is treated with drugs, he has a 95% chance of being cured if it's a drug-susceptible strain. If he receives no treatment, he has a 1 in 2 chance of surviving. So this is a pretty serious disease. And let me give you some numbers now to back that up, and these are from the 2022 WHO Global Tuberculosis Report. There are 2 billion cases of latent TB in 2022. These are estimates, of course. Let me give you some numbers about active TB. So there were 10.6 million new cases and 1.6 million deaths in 2021, and that was a bad year because it had been impacted by COVID. If we get some relative numbers now, in France, in 2022, there were 4,700 reported cases of TB. Tunisia, 4,600, and if you allow for the difference in population, so Tunisia has a 10-fold higher rate than France. And then if we look at India, they're the record holders with 3 million new cases of TB in 2022. And obviously this is because it's the biggest country in the world. Well, that's one of the reasons. Now, 8 countries account for 66% of the cases of TB. 6 of them are in the Indian subcontinent, and 2 of them are in Africa. So these are the DRC and Nigeria. So they're responsible. These are the countries with the highest incidence and also very high mortality. So 66% of the cases in 8 countries. So we need to provide to help these countries help themselves. A major breakthrough in the field of TB research and later on in terms of producing diagnostics, vaccines, and therapeutics, DVT, was the sequencing of the genome of Mycobacterium tuberculosis, a project that I led together with Bart Burrell from the Wellcome Trust Sanger Center near Cambridge. And so this shows you a schematic of the genome, and on the left-hand side here you have the paper, which is important for 2 reasons. First of all, there is a Tunisian author on the paper, and this was Frej Takaya, who played a very important role in the bioinformatic analysis of the genome. And the second reason is that this publication is the most highly cited research article of the Institut Pasteur in the electronic era, so with over 10,000 publications. So that's, I think, something to be recognized. Few words now about therapeutics. I don't have time to cover diagnostics and vaccines. This is the timeline of when TB drugs were developed. So it all started in the 1940s when streptomycin, the first drug, was discovered by Waxman. A few other drugs were discovered in the next decade, and then this gave rise to what was called the golden era for TB drug discovery in the 50s and 60s, when all of the drugs which we currently use were discovered. As time went by, it was found that combination therapy was the best way to achieve durable cure. And then we had a lag phase of almost 50 years where nothing much happened until the 2010s, when a couple of new drugs were discovered. Why is interest rekindled? One reason was in the 1980s, the emergence of HIV, which we will shortly be celebrating the 40th birthday of. This led to an explosion of cases in some parts of the world, notably sub-Saharan Africa, due to reactivation of TB in latent individuals and immunosuppression generally. In the 1990s, we had a lot of multi-drug resistant and extensively drug-resistant tuberculosis cases to deal with. And this rekindled interest in the West because these cases were cropping up in places like New York and Miami. So the US government started funding TB research again, and the European Union followed. And this was one of the reasons why drug discovery ramped up. In 2000, the Rockefeller Foundation was behind the launch of what's now known as the TB Alliance. And this is an NGO dedicated to discovering and developing new TB drugs. And so now I'm going to show you that I think we're in what could be described as the next golden era. So this is the pipeline of TB drugs currently in early stage or in clinical trials. And you can see that there's a lot of molecules here in the discovery and preclinical development phase, and then we get into the clinical phases, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and you can see that under phase 1 we have a bunch of candidates, and we have a lot more in phase 2. And then there are 3 molecules here which have completed phase 3 trials, bedaquiline, which I will refer to as B shortly, delaminid, and pretominid, which will be referred to as PA in a few minutes. This slide is important because you can see that of the 20 candidates in clinical development, 5 of them have links to the Pasteur Network. There are 3 down here, where I'm an inventor on the patent, and this one here, TBA 7371, being developed by the TB Alliance, is something which came out of a European Union project that I led. And then in phase 2, we have tilacibart, which was discovered at the Pasteur Institute in Korea, and BVL GSK 098, from which the science originated in Institut Pasteur de Lille. So I think the Pasteur Network should feel pretty proud of itself. 25% of the TB drugs in clinical trials currently have links to us. That's pretty cool, no? And what kind of budget do we work with? Yeah. I'm just going to give you another reason for why I think this is the golden era. And these are results produced by the TB Alliance in a clinical trial called NIX-TB, which was done with 3 drugs, bedaquiline, the B, pretominid, the PA, and linezolid, an old drug from Pharmacia, which is the L. By using these 3 new drugs in combination, the TB Alliance in NIX-TB showed that they could successfully treat a large number of the previously untreatable cases, such as those with extensively drug-resistant TB, so these are resistant to all the currently used drugs, as well as the multi-drug resistant TB. And 90% of the participants had favorable outcomes in that trial. So I think this is very important, and the results were published in the New England Journal a couple of years ago. This provides a simpler, faster treatment for MDR and XDR-TB, and you can see here on the left-hand side, this is a 1-day treatment with the new regimen, so there are only 5 pills a day for 6 months, so that's a mere 750 pills. The current standard of care involves taking 14,000 pills for more than 18 months. So this, I think, is a massive step forward. But it's not perfect, because linezolid, the 3rd drug in the regimen, has a lot of side effects. It's particularly bad for the nerve system. So it's important to find new companion drugs. And this is another area where we've been very active. And I'm now going to introduce you to the European Regimen Accelerator for Tuberculosis, ERA-40B. And the Institut Pasteur is the academic leader of this public-private partnership. The pharma leader is David Barros from GSK. The coordinator is Juan José Vaquero from University Carlos III in Madrid. And so ERA-40B is a consortium, a public-private partnership, if you like. Here you have the map showing you where the partners are located. There are 25 European academic partners, and then there are 6 FPIA members, so this is the pharma bunch. And then there are 5 collaborating partners who are all in the US, so they provide advice and recommendations, but are not funded by the European Commission. And the budget for 6 years is 207 million euros, and that's 90 million in new money from the European Commission in the framework of the Innovative Medicines Initiative. when I set this project up, I tried to get as many members of the Pasteur Network as possible into it. And so there are 3 of us. There's Cienzano, Lille, and Pasteur Paris. You'll note there's no partner in the south. And sadly, there is a reason for that, and it's because in this particular program, the European Commission does not fund partners from outside Europe and related countries. And that, for me, is a great source of sadness, but I'll get over it. So ERA 40B is a great opportunity. Why do I say that? Well, you have the pipeline here, and everything that's got a red box around it is property or belongs to ERA 40B consortium members. And so in this square on the right, upper right side, you have the pharma companies, TB Alliance, Gates Foundation, Drug Discovery Unit from Dundee and EPFL, who are all asset owners. What we're doing in ERA 40B is we're taking these assets and we're taking them through the different stages of preclinical development and then into late stage preclinical development, doing GLP toxicology, various tox studies and formulation work and so on. And then we take them into phase 1 trials. The phase 1 trials are conducted in Europe, and so far we have taken 2 candidates through phase 1 trials. We've taken 4 candidates into preclinical development. 2 of these failed and will not progress to the clinical stage. But I think we're doing pretty well. Another reason that I feel optimistic is that things are much better joined up these days. And there's another consortium known as Unite 40B, which takes over where we leave off. So we hand over our assets that have completed phase 1 trials to Unite 40B, shown down here in the bottom, and they take them through phase 2 A, B, and C. And so this is, for once, Europe has shown an example of joined-up thinking. It's really comforting. So that's we're in a good situation, and I think we can find a better drug than linezolid, thanks to ERA 40B and the other consortia, such as PAN-TB, funded by the Gates Foundation and many others. But there are always things that we could do better. As you can read on this slide, TB is a major cause of inequality in the world. It holds back development big time. And if we look at the spend, how much is spent on research and development on the big 3, so that's HIV, AIDS, malaria, and TB. TB is way behind. It's not getting enough funding. What have we seen during the COVID pandemic? Well, we saw that if you mobilize funds in a massive way, you can make an impact in a very short time frame. If we look at the time needed to develop the COVID vaccines, the timeline was reduced from 10 years to 10 months during the COVID crisis, thanks to massive amounts of money being thrown at the problem. Therapeutics take longer to develop than vaccines, but nonetheless, since there were a few candidate drugs that had already been tried in other therapeutic areas for viral infections, some therapeutics were developed relatively quickly too. So I am hopeful that if we put more money into tackling TB, we'll make a bigger impact on the disease burden. And in turn, I think this will help improve the quality of life throughout the world. Why can't we do the same for TB? Well, it's because of now it's dropped off the political radar. And I will be doing this in my retirement phase. I will be lobbying governments and making sure that it gets their attention. And TB will still be there long after COVID has disappeared. It's survived for hundreds and hundreds of years already, and I'm confident that we can make an impact on this disease, but it would require a sustained and long-term funding. But I'm confident that it's doable. And if you want to get a politician's interest, you have to talk in terms of return on investment. And this figure on the right shows you that investing in ending TB is great value for money. For every US dollar invested, you get $43 back by way of return. I don't know of many other investments which give you such a good return. This is one which we can't afford not to make. Thank you very much. And I will just, wait. I will just say diolch yn fawr to the funders, the European Commission and the Innovative Medicines Initiative. And I would like to thank all the members of the Pasteur Network who've contributed to making an impact on TB drug discovery and drug development. So thank you very much. And now
Thank you very much, Stewart, for this excellent presentation on TB and on the need of more finance. In French, we said l'argent, c'est le nerf de la guerre. Et donc, c'est avec les financements qu'il peut y avoir de gros programmes. Malheureusement, c'est comme ça. Et on doit faire le nécessaire pour cela. Now, I want to invite again Stewart for the Talent Awards. There is now a rule and tradition now in the Pasteur Network to have this young talent awards. So Stewart, you will.
Okay. Thank you, Heshmi. So you're working me hard today. So it's my pleasure now to. Oh, sorry. Can you turn that off, please? To introduce the Talent Awards ceremony, and it's my tremendous pleasure to do this at PNAM 23. The Pasteur Talent Awards, the Pasteur Network Talent Awards, have been awarded since 2017, and they recognize scientists from the network who have demonstrated their scientific excellence and leadership potential, in addition to their commitment to tackling public health issues and to developing scientific cooperation within the Pasteur Network. As we all know, it is extremely important to support the career development of young researchers for the future of the Pasteur Network and beyond. To date, 11 brilliant young scientists have already this prize, and they are all still contributing in a dynamic and impactful way to the scientific life of the Pasteur Network. This year, the jury has rewarded Ungu Abanda from the Pasteur Center in Cameroon. So congratulations, Ungu. And I'm now going to say a few words about you before you come up and present your talk. So after a BSc at the University of Buea in Cameroon, Ungu did a master's in molecular parasitology and vector biology at the University of Salford in the UK. He then went to do a PhD in biomedical sciences at the University of Hawaii. And this was followed by training as a public health microbiologist in Texas, and that was in 2018, and in 2020, Ongu joined the Centre Pasteur in Cameroon as a lab scientist working in the virology service. In 2022, he was promoted to lead scientist and still working in virology. The aims of his work are to help communities in Cameroon to reduce their vulnerability to arboviral infections by monitoring and predicting areas at high risk, developing new diagnostic and surveillance tests, determining climatic, social, and ecological drivers of the emergence of arboviruses, developing and supporting new approaches towards vector control and with sustainable collaborations with domestic and international partners with a focus on arboviruses. And to date, he has co-authored 16 scientific publications, and I'm pretty confident that with this upward trajectory on which he's clearly embarked, that this number will ramp up rapidly. So now, if I could please invite Ongu Abonda to come to the stage to receive the award.
Hello, good evening, everyone, and Your Excellency, members of the Pasteur Network, directors, good evening. Well, thank you so much for this award. I'll first start off by having a moment of star frenzy. I did my PhD working on drug-resistant tuberculosis, and Stuart Cole, I read a lot of your papers, so thank you so much. And also, just to say hi to Adam Mufo, I've been following up his work on innovations across Africa, so I'm really grateful to meet him in person, so thank you. So today I'll be talking about something which I'm really passionate about, and I have just 10 minutes to share this presentation to you. And I hope to follow up on you with some discussions more about what I'm really passionate about. So really, besides TB, there's also a new threat we have to really focus on is arboviruses. So what are arboviruses? So generally, these viruses are transmitted by mosquitoes, and they do not have an easy name. Most common arboviruses are like dengue, chikungunya, yellow fever. They're not of the common mainstream, but they're causing a lot of diseases in Africa and across the whole world. So why are we so concerned about these arboviruses? Our environment is really changing, and it's creating space where the mosquitoes that transmitted viruses can actually breed and continue transmitting viruses. If we look at the picture over the last 10 years, you see a number of dengue cases have increased by tenfold. We talk of outbreaks. So many outbreaks have occurred in Africa, in Asia, and in Europe as well. Chikungunya as well, similar with yellow fever cases, and similar with West Nile. And right now, I think there's an ongoing outbreak of West Nile in France, and also dengue cases in Asia. So this is a huge problem, and it's being talked about to be the next cause of a pandemic across the world. So what are we really doing about this? At the level of the WHO, there's already a sound of alarm. They are anxious about setting up this global arbovirus initiative to really get to be aware of what's happening with, and to be able to come up with new ways to control arboviruses. Within the Pasteur Network, arbovirus is a key component of their strategic plan. They're already working on it. At Centre Pasteur, we have decided to focus on 4 key components for arboviruses. First is to set up a real-time system to monitor transmission of arboviruses in Cameroon. Secondly, is really to stimulate vector control research to be able to come up with new tools to be able to control the arboviruses. Thirdly, is also to accelerate development of new diagnostics and vaccines that can actually help to reduce the burden of the disease. And lastly, also to reinforce collaboration both locally and internationally to support the arboviral initiative. So for we to really monitor in real time arbovirus transmission, we have to understand first of all, where are they occurring? And one of the things we're thinking about doing, first of all, is to conduct a seroprevalence study. So basically, I want to find out, have people been previously exposed to arboviruses? And to do this work, we have a sero bank of close to 20,000 samples collected each year from 2010 to present, which we intend to evaluate to see if there are antibodies to arbovirus and where are these antibodies and when likely did this were they exposed. For this work, we've been blessed to receive funding from the CREED, from the NIH-sponsored CREED program. And we also are working in collaboration with Scott Weaver at the University of UTMB and with Professor Henry at Cambridge. We recently received some funding from the Cambridge University to expand testing of these samples to include neglected tropical diseases, cholera, and malaria as well. We are also working with Michael White at the Institute Pasteur Network, and he is doing a fabulous job of bringing together all the beads we'll be using for this assay. So once we find out the areas where we are high in seropositivity for arbovirus, the next thing is how do we set up a surveillance system that can actually capture arboviruses? Traditionally, surveillance systems are pretty much based on this process. So basically, you require someone who is sick to report to the hospital, and for the hospital to be able to recognize and detect that disease so they can report to the surveillance system. But the challenge in most cases is that most arboviruses are symptomatic or mild, and most people who have it will not be able to go to the hospital, so I'm missing a huge number of people. Secondly, I love the hospital. You live in a malaria endemic area, so very few people are really aware of arboviruses. So it's a challenge to even recognize what the cause of the fever. And most health facilities do not lack diagnostic testing. So setting up a surveillance system based on this system might not be able to capture so many cases. Alternatively, we could set up a surveillance system based on entomology. We know for sure these viruses are transmitted by mosquitoes. But the challenge with mosquito collection and testing is you require a large amount of mosquitoes, and the virus titer in mosquitoes is quite low. And you also require expertise in being able to detect different types of mosquitoes and able to test them. So we came up with this idea. I think we said, okay, yes, a classical, on your left is a classical, on your right, sorry, it's a classical mosquito trap. And within that trap, what we intend to do is set up a FTA card that has the ability to preserve genomic material and coat this FTA card with honey. So when the trap traps mosquitoes, mosquitoes can escape from it, and in the process, they'll have to feed on the honey on the FTA card. And the good thing about mosquitoes is that before they feed, they have to expectorate their saliva. So if this mosquito is infected with a virus, the tendency is that they expel that virus in their saliva onto this FTA card that will be preserved. And what we then have to do simply is collect these FTA cards on a weekly basis or bi-weekly basis, then test for the presence of arboviruses. Right now, we just received funding. We attracted funding from the Grand Challenge Canada and the African Academy of Science to be able to set up and test this surveillance system in 6 sentinel sites in Cameroon. So prior to that, we also be screening patients for screening healthy patients as well as febrile patients for arboviruses. So what I'm basically saying that behind all this work, there'll be a lot of other work we'll be doing, like looking at the pathology of the disease itself, developing new diagnostic assays, as well as looking at entomology works as well. So for this work, I'll be working in close collaboration with Dr. Eyong Lawrence based in Saint Pasteur, Dr. Bazi Kamga, who is an entomologist at a neighboring institution in Cameroon, and also Dr. Jude Bigoga at the University of Yaoundé 1. So in a nutshell, for some of these projects we are putting forward, what we really hope to achieve is to improve the knowledge of arboviruses, develop new diagnostics and surveillance tools, and also provide training opportunities for young scientists like myself to get that training that can help them to grow into scientists. We also want to also develop mutually beneficial collaboration between CPC and all the collaborators within the Pasteur Network and out of the network as well. And we hope that this will also learn new ideas, transfer of technology to actually help build our entomology and arbovirus research at CPC. So if we have gotten this far in arbovirus, it's really thanks to a lot of collaboration from so many members of the Pasteur Network. And I really like to seize the opportunity to thank Institut Pasteur in Dakar. They have been very supportive in providing us with diagnostic reagents to really help set up diagnosis for arboviruses in Cameroon. I also want to thank, special thanks to Dr. Annabella Fayou. She has been very helpful. We just got a new entomology platform, and she has been very pushful and helpful in trying to get some activities going on that platform. So I just want to use this opportunity to say special thanks to her. And obviously, I just want to thank the senior management of Saint Pasteur, represented here by the director and the scientific director. So thank you for all your support and encouragements for making me stay at Saint Pasteur, and also my entire team and colleagues at Saint Pasteur. So thank you so much, and thank you so much for that work.
Thank you very much, and again, congratulations for this fantastic work. As you know, one of the priority of the Pasteur Network is vector-borne disease, especially now with the climate change, etc. So it's very pertinent, and congratulations again. Stewart, we have to declare the... So please come. They told me that we have to declare the opening of the new Pasteur Network meeting. So please, go ahead, please.
What do I have to say?
That 23 Pasteur Network is officially open.
Oh, okay. Well, sorry. I thought this was that there was another prize. Okay, so we've now reached the point where I can officially declare the Pasteur Network annual meeting 2023, PNAM 23, officially open.
Yeah.
And and everyone is invited to attend the meeting and to participate in a lively and active manner, in as constructive a way as you can possibly do. And I think we should probably move to the cocktail sooner rather than later. Exactly. So thank you very much, everyone, for being here, for your listening, and we'll continue over a drink. Yeah.
Thank you, and welcome again. We want